Hello! So, we're all feeling a lot of pressure right now since we have almost all of our astronomical bodies in our solar system, either in Capricorn or in Aquarius. And pressure is not bad. There's a lot of good things that come from pressure. But it is a pressure. So, even if we're feeling like, yeah, okay, I'm making progress, I feel good, I'm moving forward, it's still good to keep this following dynamic in mind. And especially if you're feeling like, oh, I'm not quite reaching my goals, I'm not quite getting it together. Then it's especially important to keep this dynamic in mind. So yes, we have a lot of pressure, but we have a couple things we need to consider. And they all kind of boil down to the same thing. We need to be patient. We have the biggest thing I think is the moon is in Capricorn and it's making its way to the new moon. So we are still in the lunar cycle from basically about 30 days ago or so when the new moon was in Capricorn. We have not begun this next lunar cycle, which is going to, in so many ways, directly deal with all of this pressure that we're dealing with in new ways, moving forward with it, and making the most of transiting Mars going into Capricorn, like we talked about last time. So there's that. Venus just went direct today, so that's marking one of the two retrograde periods going direct. The other one is Mercury, still retrograde until about February 3rd. But even when an astronomical body does go direct, or seen from our perspective, it seems to be going forward in our solar system, astronomically speaking. That's what a retrograde is when it is retrograde is when it seems to be going backwards because our orbits are just not synced. So our orbits are synced again, but we're still not at the time, we're not at the period of when we're totally free of the retrograde's influence, because Venus isn't back where it was when it started to slow down and go retrograde. So we're still, when it comes to love and relationships, Venus, it's interesting because we have two different dynamics. Essentially, actually, let's look at the big picture before we look at relationships. The first, basically half of February, it kind of is really convenient. Basically, with Valentine's Day, actually, we're seeing a major focus forward. We still will have some little bit of hangover from probably Venus retrograde shadow period, maybe Mercury for a couple more days, if that. But by that point, we're in the new lunar cycle. We're actually at the full moon of the lunar cycle at that point, and we're really moving forward in about 2 weeks' time. The next 2 weeks, we don't want to be passive. We want to be doing things with the pressure, but it's really important to be gentle with yourself, to not be harsh with yourself. And I think especially for Sunday, for the rest of Saturday, for Sunday, for the first part of Monday, it's so important to really be gentle with yourself. And yeah, we want to be making the most of the pressure, but we don't want to be cold to ourselves, to our needs, to our feelings, to the challenges and limitations that we're feeling. Because even if we have all these great goals and ambitions, like no doubt we do, especially with Mars and Capricorn on its own, let alone Moon and Venus and Mercury, and then the Sun and Saturn are in Aquarius, and they're directly conjunct. And over the next 5 days, though, that conjunction will grow tighter. Like, it's hard to ignore. Anyone who's trying to ignore pressure this time is just gonna be really struggling. But even if we're not ignoring pressure, we just got to keep in mind that we're not quite in the time period of directly making the most of this pressure. So be patient with yourself. Mercury's retrograde. Delays are going to happen. We have to move backwards to move forwards, as I always say with Mercury retrograde. So there is progress being made, but it's more about revisiting the past and whatnot before moving forward. So I think that's really good to keep in mind. Relationships is really okay. Actually, one more thing, and then relationships. Moon in Capricorn, Sun in Aquarius. There's no such thing as a bad energy. Every single energy has great gifts, as well as equal challenges as well. However, there are energies that are rough. And Moon in Capricorn, as well as Sun in Aquarius, are both rough. Whenever we experience this, and we experience it every year with the solar lunar calendar, with the Moon going through its phases in relation to the Sun, this is, in a lot of ways, the coldest couple days of the year. It doesn't have to be bad, but it is a highly logical time period. I don't want to focus on emotions. I want to focus on pressure. Not to mention we have Mercury and Venus and Mars. We have all the personal planets in a Saturn-ruled energy, plus Saturn, and it's conjunct Sun. So I just want to be encouraging for anybody who's really feeling down during this time. Just be gentle with yourself. Keep the timelines that we had just mentioned in mind. Give yourself unconditional self-love. You don't have to earn it through accomplishments. You don't have to be anyone who you're not. You don't have to live a life that is not true to you, for you to be happy and content and to give love and to receive love. So I think that's really important to keep in mind, is just give yourself what you need during this time. It is, I know it's not winter obviously around the entire world, but in the Northern Hemisphere, there's a pretty good metaphor for it being the heart of winter and one of the coldest nights of the year. I mean, if not, obviously not temperature-wise necessarily, but just emotionally. We don't want to get caught in our minds. We don't want to get caught in looking at everything logically. We need to make room for our emotions because we're human, but also because we have Jupiter in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces, and that's giving us a lot of gifts when it comes to our emotions. But yeah, again, during any time period, we need to not ever get out of balance with the logic and the heart, the mind and the heart balance. So it's really good to keep in mind. Just be gentle with yourself, love yourself, heal as need be. That's really important. And the last but not least, relationships. So this is a really interesting thing because, again, we're just coming out of the Venus retrograde time period. So we'll still have the shadow period. I don't know the exact dates. We'll cover it as time goes on, but I imagine for pretty much all of February, if not at least the next 2 weeks. And the influence will chill out more as time goes on, naturally. But we are still kind of, when it comes to relationships, and this goes for love relationships, of course, especially, but I think any kind of relationship, really, we're still in that mode of kind of evaluating things. Where are things at? Do I still need space from somebody, or is it time to revisit the relationship? It's still a little bit more of an internal period, but Venus has gone direct, so it is moving forward as seen from our perspective here on Earth as per its orbit, along with our orbit. So there is more of a syncing up during this time, whereas it's been retrograde since about mid-December. So that's, again, we still want to kind of have a little bit of caution, might be too heavy of a word, but just considering we're dealing with Capricorn and Venus, yeah, so caution, sure. Just maybe patience. Patience is a better word. But that being said, Mars is going full force ahead. It is in Capricorn. It is actually already conjunct Venus, and it'll make an exact conjunction over the course of, I think, in about a week and a half's time. I know that by Valentine's Day it's directly conjunct. Again, Valentine's Day, it keeps popping up. It has been for a couple months, where Mercury will go into Aquarius, so it'll still be in the shadow period for Mercury retrograde, but it'll have moved forward. Venus and Mars will be conjunct. New beginnings. It's the full moon. So whatever plans you have for, and maybe right now actually it's good to not have necessarily like definite plans, but it's good to look at Valentine's Day, especially from a love perspective, but in any kind of perspective, as moving forward, progress, action, energy, the next step. Whereas before, again, we still move forward technically with retrogrades, but we have to kind of revisit where we've been. So it's like, okay, we're going here, and okay, now we're going forward. So around Valentine's Day is when we get to that loop-de-loop after that part, and then we're moving forward. So, yeah. We'll talk more as Saturn and Sun become directly conjunct, and with the new moon. But again, it's good to keep in mind that pressure is a long game. We can't sprint with it. It's a marathon. Everything with Saturn is a marathon. So we need to take our time. We need to be patient. We need to be breathing deeply and reminding ourselves that we have huge goals during this time. And if we're not having huge goals, we want to be figuring out what our huge goals are. But most of us, it's pretty clear, like, okay, we have huge goals. They're not going to happen overnight. They're not going to happen even necessarily, not the full extent of them, at least over the course of a month or even a couple months. We've got to be patient. And a lot of us are also seeing the culmination of goals. So I think especially with that, be patient. We don't want to get obsessed with the goals. We want to stay a nice balance with resting and playing and enjoying life, because that's when we're actually most productive, when we have everything in balance and we're not burning ourselves out. And then we have to take a long time to recover that. Otherwise, we could have been slow and steady and making incremental progress and making a lot more progress in the long term with it. So again, we want to be driven, we want to be ambitious, we want to push forward. It's an exciting time to get stuff done and to reach our goals. But we have really the whole next month to majorly reach our goals, and then of course even beyond there. But the next month, especially it's February in general, there's a lot of energy, a lot of progress to be made, whereas now we're kind of playing more catch up, or we're kind of, again, we're not quite in the heart of working with the pressure. Yeah, now's a good time to plan for February, and to do what we can to progress. But yeah, again, it's more February, so don't put that kind of pressure on you here today. Tomorrow's challenges, goals, vision, etc. will be fulfilled with, at least in part, tomorrow's energy. Again, we want to get started now, but that's what's going to be happening. As always, I'm doing readings, info in the description. And I'm so excited. The book is moving forward. I'm editing like crazy. And by Valentine's Day, I'm going to be, again, sending the first 40,000 words of the book, which is most of the book, to those who pre-order the book. So that info to pre-order is also in the description. Moving forward. Infinite love to you, my friends. Namaste. Peace.